All right, Winston, let's do this. It's not going to be a happy Viva on the street tonight. And it's not going to be a happy Viva on the street tonight because I've actually come to the point where I can safely say that I hate our government. I hate our government so much because they've actually caused me to question whether or not I hate my country. And I don't hate my country, but I hate my government to the point where I am now asking myself, do I hate the government or do I hate the country that is run by this government? I went bowling today. I didn't actually go bowling. I took the kids bowling, and I took my 3 kids and one of their friends bowling. Didn't even think about the issue, the vaccine. I didn't even think about it. I just said it's a rainy Saturday. I've got 3 kids and 1 friend. What do? Let's go bowling. I show up to the bowling alley. I have my own balls and my own shoes, I'm proud to say. And then I see the sign on the front door, "You will not be admitted entry unless you have the vaccine passport." And my stomach sunk. My stomach sunk because I don't have the app on my phone, nor will I download it. I will not download it out of protest, and I will not do anything that requires this out of protest. And I walk in and I say, hopefully they won't ask me. Don't ask me for the passport so that I can just get through this moment with dignity. And lo and behold, some 18-year-old kid behind the counter says, "I need your vaccine passport." And he pulls out an iPad to scan me. And I said, "I don't have it. I'm sorry. I don't have it. I'm not showing it to you." And then he says, "Well, do you have any papers?" And I remembered an email that I sent to my wife as a joke after I got my second vaccine shot thing. I sent the email to my wife. It was a picture of my papers. And I sent it with a message that was intended to be a joke when I sent it to her. But lo and behold, it's not a joke anymore. So this kid behind the counter says, "I need to see your papers. If somebody from the government comes here and catches me not asking for your papers, we'll get a big fine." And I was not enraged. I was just nauseated and disgusted because this is the world in which we live, where the government has turned minimum wage employees at a bowling alley into the secret police of the government to check for the papers. And I showed him my proof. I showed him my proof, and I felt like I was compromising my integrity and my soul. And the reason I did it, only because I had kids there. Any other day of the week, I would have been out of there and I would never go back. But I had 4 kids, and Lord knows if I had left without the bowling that I promised on a rainy day, I would have had 4 kids in tears. And the question I'm asking myself as a parent, what lesson am I teaching my kids? Am I teaching them to be compliant with rules that I don't believe in? Or do I expect a 5-year-old, 2 8-year-olds, and a 12-year-old to understand what protest is? Are they going to understand and appreciate what the protest against unconstitutional, unscientific, and immoral government measures is? Or am I just expected them to say, "Daddy is mean and wouldn't take us bowling today"? So I showed them the papers and I got in to go bowling, and yeah, it kind of ruined the moment. And I'm just sitting there bowling miserably, although I did break 200 in my 3rd game, but I'm bowling miserably saying, I hate the government because the government has made me dislike the country in which I live. And it's a disgusting relationship. And I was sitting there bowling and I'm saying, this is the relationship that an abuse victim has with their abusers. This is the relationship that a cult member has with a cult. And I'm not saying this to be hyperbolic, to be melodramatic. It is literally the relationship that a cult member has with a cult. The first thing that a cult does in order to get subservience, obedience from cult members, cuts them off from their family. It cuts them off from their friends. It cuts them off from the information that they read. And it gets them, in so doing, to be alienated from the world around them, to only receive information from specific sources, to not have socializing, interaction, exchange of ideas with family, friends, loved ones, so that you become easier to manipulate. And we have been manipulated through fear to the point where we think now that in order to go bowling, you need a vaccine passport. And I went to this bowling alley, by the way, for everybody saying this is going to be good for business, everyone's going to love it, it's going to make you feel safer. The bowling alley was empty. The bowling alley was virtually empty. There's 36 big ball lanes, and then I think there's another 30 some odd small ball lanes. There were 2 families in there on a Saturday, a rainy Saturday. This is not good for business. This is not good for anything. What this is good for is pitting Canadian citizens against Canadian citizens. What this is good for is promoting the fear porn paranoia that the government has been promoting for the last 2 years. And they've gotten us to do it. They've gotten us to not be with friends and family, to not celebrate with friends and family, to not mourn with friends and family. I got an email from someone. I get upset whenever I think about this. I got an email from someone saying that their loved one passed away. And I say their loved one, their spouse passed away. Not only could they not be with their spouse in their dying moments, they had a compromised funeral for their loved one. And this is what cults do. This is what abusive relationships do. They get you to be dissociated from loved ones. They get you to be dissociated from the people. What are you doing? That once made your life what it was, so that you become alienated, distraught, and easier to manipulate for the purposes of whatever it is that the cult or the abuser wants you to do. And that's what we are living through right now in Canada, to the point where people have now been manipulated and misguided into believing that a vaccine passport is necessary for safety, because 82% of Canada is fully vaccinated right now. And setting aside the fact that even CJAD themselves was reporting that 54% of new hospital admissions were fully vaccinated, setting aside the science, they've gotten Canadians to believe that this divisive garbage of political policy is necessary for their own protection. Because if you're fully vaccinated at a bowling alley, at a restaurant, at a gym, what you need in order for your own protection to be insured is only other fully vaccinated people to be admitted to this institution, ignoring the fact that even the fully vaccinated can carry, contract, and transmit the virus. So setting aside the science, that's what they've gotten us to believe. And I don't know what to do. I genuinely do not know what to do to protest. It is very easy for everyone out there to say, you should have walked right out of there. Take your 4 kids sobbing, angry at you, and make a point that the kids will never get, the bowling alley doesn't care, and only the government will appreciate by having caused further strife among citizens. And this is the beauty. They send me in there, and they send that employee at the bowling alley to card me. Oh, they didn't just card me, by the way. They asked for my papers, and then for identification to confirm my identity on the papers. And if I make a scene, who suffers? The population at large suffers. I suffer. The kids suffer. The bowling alley suffers. The only people who don't suffer are the government, who then get to say, look at the level of disobedience right now. We need to impose more police. We need to impose more measures. We need to impose more fines, sanctions. It is a beautiful thing where all that the government does is impose ridiculous laws, unscientific laws, divisive laws, and then when people react badly, they get to say, whoa, look at this, look at how uncivil society is. We get to impose more laws, more restrictions, like they're doing Saskatchewan, throughout Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It is absolutely depressing, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. The government has got me to the point where I question whether or not I even love my own country anymore. But one thing I know for certain, I loathe the government that is running this country right now. What do you do? And where do you go? And what are people going to do to pull back this drape that has been pulled over their eyes? At first, they have to realize that the drape is there. At first, they have to realize that they have been potentially manipulated. But for anybody who has ever been in an abusive relationship, for anyone who has been in a cult, I can safely say I've never been in a cult, nor have I been in an abusive relationship, but I have more experience with the abusive relationships than the cults, just as a matter of practice of law. What do? The first thing you do is have to make people realize. But you cannot help someone who does not want to help themselves. And this, as a lawyer, I can tell you, whether it's abuse, whether it's addiction, whether it is any number of life problems, you cannot help someone who does not want to help themselves. And you have to get people to the point where they appreciate that they need help and they want to get helped. And I say this with full reflection and insight, because we all have our issues and we all have our denials and we all have, the things that we are willing to pull over our own eyes. But you cannot help people who don't want to help themselves. And too many people right now have been manipulated through a solid 1.5 to 2 years of incessant fear porn, fear mongering, to think that this is all somehow justified. And if you just go along for another day, another week, another month, another year, if you just do what the government says now and they promise your liberties, they'll give you your liberties. When we've seen from day one that this has been, if it hasn't been a lie, it's just been inaccurate. And between lies and inaccuracies, the outcome is the same, so the intention doesn't matter. 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into 2 years. Masks will never be mandatory, turned into mandatory masks. Vaccines will never be mandatory, turned into mandatory vaccines, turned into vaccine passports. And we've done all of this. We've given all of these rights up under the promise, the pretext that this would get our rights back. And what has it gotten us? More restrictions, more impositions, and it doesn't look like it's getting better anytime soon. I'm gonna tell you, the only people who can say, give up your rights if you want your rights back, are the government, and unfortunately, a populace that has been beaten into submission through fear day in and day out has gotten to the point where the equation makes sense. Give up your rights if you want your rights back. That equation never makes sense. It never will make sense. And we need people to understand that at some point in time, we're not going to get our rights back unless we demand for our rights back. I don't know when I can go bowling again. And I'm going to have to find an excuse for the kids as to why I cannot go back to that bowling alley, because I will not go back to a place that demands for my papers out of principle. And I just have to make sure that I am not sacrificing my children for my own principles, because they will not understand it. And by the time they do understand it, I may not be on this earth for them to say, sorry, Dad, that we got angry with you for what you did when you did it, because now we understand why you did it. All right, peace.